And welcome into podcast number 4, TD Ryan Unleashed. Honored and privileged to have with us a state representative from the 70th District, Jeff Keicher, joining us this morning. Jeff, thank you so much for your time.
You bet. Good morning. Thank you for having me.
You're pretty in pink. Is it all right for one man to say that to another man? But you're wearing a pink shirt and a beautiful pink tie. And
I have a theory, TD. Bright shirt, bright guy.
I like that. Now, we're hearing the song, or we should be. The intro song is, do you know we have a state song? You probably do. I didn't know that.
I do.
It's simply called Illinois.
Yeah. Illinois, along the river.
Right.
Yeah. I remember it from 4th grade, but barely.
I didn't know we had a state song, so that's great. So you passed the first test there. We're talking to Illinois State Representative Jeff Keicher. Now, Jeff, there's some issues we want to talk about. Obviously, the largest budget in Illinois state history, $53 million, with $2.6 billion more than last year. I want to talk about the taxes, the new taxes that we're going to be dealing with, $1 billion worth of new taxes for raises and the new programs. Old people like me, should I be driving? Do I have to take a driver's test? When should I take that driver's test? The Chavano State Park and the Native American mascots. I know there's legislation now wanting to ban the Native American mascots and, of course, the Sandwich Indians and the Morris Redskins. Some of the local teams will talk to you about that. But first, we want to get to know Jeff Keicher better. You know, that's why I love being able to do these podcasts, Jeff, is that we can delve into things a little bit more, including yourself. You know, I've interviewed you numerous times, but I didn't even know where you grew up. I just asked you a moment ago where you grew up in St. Charles, you said.
Yes, I did.
Tell us about idyllic life in St. Charles.
Well, I was born and raised in St. Charles, and half of my family, my dad's side of the family, was out here in Sycamore, so that's my Sycamore connection.
Okay.
So I kind of always had a relationship with DeKalb and was here and there. The quick thumbnail sketch, my mom and dad got divorced. Dad left about 5th grade, and my mom raised us. She was waiting tables to keep a roof over our head, and it was a pretty tough time, as you can imagine. And it was waiting tables at Colonial restaurants. If anybody remembers Colonial, right?
I remember it, sure.
Right, a little breakfast joint, a little burger joint. So I watched her struggle for a number of years, and then she changed jobs and got into the mortgage business. And I think that always taught me that humble humility that I try to approach this work with, because I know what it's like out there. I know what it's like to have not enough money to make it to the end of the month, and that's not easy for so many people.
Yeah, and you know, my father died at a young age, and my mother had to raise 5 of us through our adolescent years, you know, and I always joke that I apologized to her every time I saw her in my 20s and 30s, but for your mom to have to go through that, and she's got the worries of not only taking care of you guys, but you keep a roof over your head and get food on the table, and take care of you as well. I know my wife had a similar situation. We had the 3 boys. She was waiting tables, babysitting, calling home every couple of hours, make sure everything's okay, but that's a rough way to live, isn't it?
It was, but I don't think we knew how rough it was at the time. And I would tell you this, TD, those rough times helped craft me into the person I am today, and I would never trade them for the world. They taught me resiliency. They taught me how to deal with people at a level that I don't think I would have learned any other way. So I think, like so many folks out there, we learn from our struggles in life more than we do our victories.
Were you a good student? Was Jeff Keicher head of the class?
Are my kids going to be listening to this? Funny
Transparency,
enough, I stumbled on one of my high school report cards, and it gave me a remembrance of just how average of a student I really was. C was average, right? And what's funny is,
the best was that he plays well with others. You got that one going for you.
You always think you did better back then, right? You have this fond recollection of how well you did. I wasn't a horrible student, but I wasn't the top of the list either, but did well enough that I was able to get into NIU and left home, and I was able to live with my grandparents out here in Sycamore. Had it not been for them, I wouldn't have been able to make it through. I bartended my way through school, switched majors a couple times, actually quit school. And again, going back to the theme of failures being some of the best lessons, I'm glad I quit school. I quit for a semester because I didn't think I needed it. I was making enough money bartending, and why do I need school? Had I not done that, I wouldn't have been nearly as committed to having a successful future as I have.
Now, was there a coach or a teacher that had an influence on you that said, I want to be like this person when I get older?
Yeah, George Beasley. For those of you who remember George, he was my predecessor as a State Farm agent. He was a family friend and a business partner with my granddad. And he just had this way of passing his optimism on to everybody else. I mean, George was just a lovable, laughable guy. But when business needed to get done, he put everything aside, and he was as serious as anybody out there. So I would definitely put George up on a pedestal for that.
That's great. You met your lovely wife, Karen. Now, did you meet her at NIU, or where did you meet Karen?
I didn't. So While I was bartending my way through college, I was one of the bar managers at a place in Geneva called Riverwalk, and my wife had been working there for 3 or 4 years. We didn't really get along that well. We had a couple run-ins, and she was in the banquets upstairs doing banquet sales, and we were left in charge of the restaurant one weekend. And I wanted to say thank you for all the help she gave me while we were managing the rest of the team being gone, and took her to a concert in Ravinia, and we kind of hit it off. So, yeah.
That's great.
Yeah. Haven't looked back.
I know of the one son because he was a star on the football team, but tell us about your offspring there.
So we have 3 kids. My daughter is 24 years old, just recently graduated from Butler University. My next oldest is 20 years old, Oliver. He is out at Elon University in North Carolina. And my youngest, Ethan, is 18, graduating from Sycamore here next month.
Star lineman for the Sycamore football team?
I'm very proud of him because, like so many parents out there, we see our kids go through these, again, struggles in life and figuring things out. And when he saw the pathway and had encouragement from the coaches about what it would take to actually build a winning team, he was all in. He was hitting the gym, he was exercising, he was eating right, and became a different person. And I think sports does that for a lot of young men. And as I look back at where this country has gone, I mean, TD, back in the 80s, it was take your daughter to work day, right? Mm-hmm. Just about every segment out there is having attention paid to it except young men. And I think we see a listlessness among that population. So when I can see him develop within himself that courage and that determination to be successful, I know he's going to be okay.
And you look at the body of work for his class at Sycamore High School. I mean, I think they've won more games than any other class before them. And, of course, getting right there to the state championship.
So many times.
So close.
Missed it by that much.
But, again, that will help him in the long run, won't it?
Yeah. Some of those losses are the biggest things that make us appreciate when we do win. One of the things I share with my State Farm peers, I have been denied for other State Farm agency openings before I got this one in Sycamore. And I wouldn't have been nearly as successful had I landed in any of those 4. So sometimes things happen for a reason, and we dig into our failures and just improve from where we're at.
Now, why the insurance route? What was it? You gave up your dream of being a pro athlete. We know that.
Well, I had mentioned I left school and needed a job, and I had actually, it's a little bit of a funny personal story. I called George Beasley, he's back in Sycamore, and I said, "Hey, George, you know anybody at National Bank and Trust? I think I should be a teller and get out of this bartending business so I can get back to school." He said, "Well, why don't you come work for me?" "I don't think so. Insurance isn't for me. Do you mind calling the bank?" He said, "No, seriously, let's talk." George, I turned him down 3 times. And then he finally said, "Get your in here, and we're going to do a little bit of a test." We had a pre-employment test that State Farm requires people to do. Passed with flying colors, and it's no looking back after that.
That's
been fantastic. And it's a relationship business, which is core to who George was, it's core to who I am, and it gives me an ultimate satisfaction from helping people.
Very good. I dated a girl from the bank, but she lost interest. That's a whole other story. It's a bank joke. I had to get that in there. And I did want to mention when we were talking about the Sycamore football team, Coach Joe Ryan, and what influence he's had on those kids and generations of kids. And the kids who had to go through the COVID years, you know, they had to get through that. And I think it's great that they have a coach like that.
He's an incredible man. He's going to leave an incredible legacy. And for Sycamore specifically to benefit from having Pete Johnson, and I'm so glad I got to know Pete through Rotary over the years when I first got to town. And then followed up by Coach Ryan. It's an incredible legacy that those young men on the football team truly appreciate at a core level and realize how special of a thing they actually have.
It's great. And of course, your son had to dye his hair blonde, right? A couple times.
That's the playoff theme. Not everybody does it, but that's an old standing tradition among the football players.
All right, let's talk some serious stuff here now. And of course, that is the budget. You know, we hear the budget. And now, when I heard it was the largest budget ever in the state of Illinois, isn't that true every year, Jeff? Is the budget always bigger, or there have been years where the budget actually got smaller?
Yeah, there have been years where it's been more stagnant than what we've seen this time. This is the biggest budget that we've ever had, and I want to put a little framing around that if I can. So I took over from my predecessor, Bob Pritchard, in 2018, got sworn in a few months early in July of 2018. And at the time I came in, our budget that we were looking at was a little over $39 billion. Well, earlier in February, this governor introduced a budget that's $54 billion, 39 to $54 billion in a matter of 7 years. We have increased the revenue in the state of Illinois with a handful of fee and tax increases. But again, his income tax proposal failed, right? We didn't increase the rates on corporations or individuals.
Right.
But we have increased the amount of revenue coming into the state of Illinois by $15 billion in 7 years. And I resonate on that because I have seen my peers across the aisle find new and creative ways to spend those dollars instead of honoring the programs we already had, like Meals on Wheels, adults with disabilities, reducing the backlog for the PUNS list, helping those that are on Medicaid be in assisted care facilities. For the last few years, TD, we have paid on the Medicare rate $85 a day less than the costs to have somebody as an adult with disabilities in a Medicaid center. So we've got to step up because, and I'm kind of all over the place, so I apologize.
That's okay.
You feel free to rein me in on this.
It's such a broad category.
It is hugely broad. And so my perspective is government should be mainly focused on three things. First is educating our kids through college, right? Let's make sure that we've got smart kids coming to our school. We've got some work to do there. The second is infrastructure, making sure we got roads and electricity and water and those things. And then the third and most important is taking care of our most vulnerable. We need to take care of the people who can't take care of themselves. And we have continued to fail on that. I had a press conference last week where I called out the governor on the work that hasn't been occurring at DCFS and the problems that these kids wind up getting into that if we don't fix them now, they're long-term detriments.
All right, very good. We're talking to Jeff Keicher, State Representative, about various issues, including the budget, and again, the largest budget in the state of Illinois. And part of that spending was undocumented immigrants. I see here roughly $3 billion was spent on Illinois tax dollars on services, including things like health care, which really, I know, upset a lot of people as they're trying to get their own health care taken care of. Talk about that. Again, we're not heartless, and we don't want to hurt anybody, but we can't save everybody. And what do you think about this $3 billion spent?
So let's start from the framing of taking care of our most vulnerable first. And I'm going to give a little bit of context and background because I think it helps people understand where we've actually been. So back in the early 2000s, if you remember, Rod Blagojevich passed a program called All Kids. So it's called Illinois All Kids. And what the premise of that program was is there should be no child in the state of Illinois under 18 who doesn't have access to health care. Very admirable. And at the time, it was very manageable. It was through our Medicaid program. But what they did is they allowed non-citizens into that program. So they kind of opened the door to people that are non-residents. Now, the important thing to know about non-residents, non-citizens of the state of Illinois, we receive a 53% reimbursement from the feds on every dollar we spend in Medicare. So we're spending about 50% of the dollar.
Okay.
We get 50% reimbursed from the feds. We don't get that with immigrants. We don't get that with non-citizens. We only get it with our residents. So
that money is gone.
That money is gone, and it's coming 100% from the Illinois taxpayer. So we go to the year 2021, and we put into effect what's called HBIA, which is Health Benefits for Immigrant Adults. It was passed mainly by Delia Ramirez, who's now a congresswoman in D.C. She used this as one of the platforms to get her there. And what that said is any senior, 65 or older, who is a non-citizen has health care access in the state of Illinois, paid for 100% by the taxpayer. I mean, no premiums, 100% fee for service. So you know how you go to a doctor and it's reduced by whatever that negotiated rate is?
Right.
100% of that is paid. There is no reduction. 100% of pharmacy, no copay, nothing in there. It is literally 100% paid for by the taxpayers with no subsidy from the federal government. The original indication from Delia at the time in 2021 is to take care of these elderly was going to cost somewhere between $10 and $15 million. Okay. The next year she came back and said, we've got some other people we got to take care of. So let's lower the age from 65 to 55. So we did that. We expanded the HBI. I didn't vote for it, folks. I voted against it because, again, we weren't taking care of our most vulnerable, but we were expanding the program.
Right.
So we lowered it to 55. She came back the next year and lowered it to age 42. So right now in the state of Illinois, if you are between the ages of 0 to 17 or 42 or older and you are a non-citizen of this country without immigration status, we're paying 100% of your health insurance, health care needs.
Is that right?
Now, I want to issue a caveat, there was a stoppage in the enrollments out there, but before that stoppage, the governor's own management and budget office predicted the cost for the last fiscal year to be $1.5 billion on on non-citizens. Again, sounds heartless, and I'm sorry about that, but we have adults with disabilities who aren't being taken care of. We've got a backlog of what's called the PUNS list.
Yeah, what
and
is that, the PUNS list?
So the PUNS list is adults that have aged out of the school system, so they're 22 years old and older, who need a caregiver. So it hires your mom to let her leave her job and get paid to come take care of you. It would hire a caretaker to come in and take care of you while your parents were at work. So it's a functional support of allowing that adult with disability to actually function. And right now, I believe the number is we have 15,000 people on the backlog. Here, I've got it right here. The PUNS backlog right now is 5 to 7 years. So once you're on the list, it takes 5 to 7 years to get the money to be able to support it. The funding was cut $32 million, and we have 16,000 adults with disabilities waiting for services on the PUNS list.
Is that right?
16,000. Now, here's another number. We have over 50,000 individuals, adults with disabilities, where the main caregiver for them is 60 years or older. 50,000 of them. Those are the baby boomers who are retiring.
Right.
What happens when they pass on? What happens to that adult? Again, the premise that I've got for government, we need to take care of our most vulnerable before we start offering things to other people.
Very good.
I spilled a lot there. I apologize.
No, that's right. No, if you get into a subject like this, you have to delve and you have to give a little background like you did. And I just wrote this down, just freelancing, thinking the sanctuary city. I remember sanctuary state when I remember when Governor Pritzker said we were sanctuary. But who made that decision? And was that voted on, or do we remain a sanctuary state? Can we pull out at any time? Or
Yeah, part of that predates me. So I believe it was 2016 or 2017. Governor Rauner passed the Trust Act. He wanted to make sure that law enforcement was able to investigate some very serious crimes where non-citizens were not reporting in what that crime is. So, you have an illegal alien who is a victim of domestic violence or rape or sexual assault of some other nature, and they weren't going to the police. It was going underreported. So Governor Rauner said we need to have this Trust Act passed so that we can have people trust government facilities, that they weren't going to turn them over to ICE and have them deported.
Okay.
So that's where it started. It was enhanced, if you will, in 2019, and again, I believe it was in 2021. And in my opinion, we've just gone too far. We've gone too far. And the folks, what's interesting, TD, the folks who are most upset with this are first and second generation immigrants, the people who have gone through the system the right way,
yes.
And they are beside themselves when they see what's happening. And I thought it was also interesting when we saw over the last couple of years, the poorest of the poor neighborhoods in Chicago, we had black and brown members of our state who were outraged at the level of care that these illegal immigrants were getting versus them. They've been sitting in poverty forever.
Right.
And these folks all of a sudden get this glamorous living. It's just too much.
Now, I should point out, you guys, the Republicans, you have some ideas for lowering our tax burden. Obviously, are we first or second in the country? Jeff? It depends on what category.
Yeah,
right?
and it depends on whose numbers you're actually looking
but
at.
basically, we're first or second in terms of highest taxes in the country.
Suffice it to say, it's one of the highest.
All right,
yes.
all right, that's fair enough to say. But you guys are proposing reforming estate taxes, lowering or eliminating the license fee for small businesses. Now, that's a big one that jumped out to me, because small businesses are lifeblood, right?
Yes.
That's people we have to take care of.
Yes.
So will these plans work?
I would offer to you that they would work. I'm 100% behind
Of course,
those
they have to get
plans.
passed, don't they?
They have to get passed. And so when you look at property values, especially in our area of Kane and DeKalb County, you look at a farmer, all of a sudden his estate, because land prices have gone up so much, his small farm that he inherited from his dad or his granddad or his uncle is now worth a few $1,000,000, and he needs to sell to pay that tax burden when he passes instead of having it go on to his kids. So we're pushing that mainly through our concern for the Illinois farmer. We want to make sure that they're able to hold on to their land and continue to work their land. And the franchise tax that you're referring to, any franchised business operation in the state of Illinois pays a portion of their revenues in franchise tax. We had an agreement with the governor in 2019, the same agreement that allowed the data center to be constructed in the south side of DeKalb with the data center incentive and the manufactured purchase credit, and the R&D credit, the Blue Collar Jobs Act, a whole bunch of Republican pro-growth ideas. and the governor pulled back on the franchise tax. It was gradually going to be phased out over 5 years. He pulled out and said he's just not interested in doing that. So we've been pushing aggressively ever since to have that done. And
Now, you
it's a
mentioned
shame.
the buildings, when we talk about the Ferrara building, you were behind getting them here, and of course, Facebook as well. Now, the Heinz building is one we keep hearing that is sinking into the ground.
Yeah,
and,
yeah.
Now it's, I guess, 2027, they're pushing that back.
That's what I heard.
What do you know about that, or do you know any more than that?
Not anything at the ground level, just the same things that have been published in the paper and that I heard from you on the radio about some of the concerns that were out there. Look at the opportunity. Yes, a lot of people are frustrated, but you look at the amount of steel that was up on that cement foundation. It was a ton of, not literally a ton, multiple
Several
tons, right?
yes.
And so it doesn't surprise me when you think about all that weight that you would have some settling of the ground. It's just a massive compression of the soil. So I'm glad they caught it before they finished the project. I'm glad that they're going to stay committed to DeKalb County. I think it's an important addition, not only to the DeKalb County economy, but also to the state of Illinois. I think the number was it's a $400 million facility, if I'm not mistaken. That's a big investment in the state of Illinois.
It really is.
Yeah.
So we're talking about money, and I was talking to you out there. I was doing a little research before you came in, and I went to Jeff Keicher website, and I could see, A, how you voted, and B, how much money you've raised through your campaigning, and then where the money came from. Party, labor, finance, insurance, real estate, construction. I didn't realize you're that transparent.
Listen, everything out there, if anybody has a question, I'm happy to talk about it. And I've gotten some pushback from some of my Republican colleagues for accepting union money for my campaign support. But I would tell you all day long, my dad was a union carpenter. My grandfather was a union carpenter. He built bridges all over northern Illinois. My uncle was a union member with laborers. My cousin is. Every family in the state of Illinois has a union relationship if you look a degree or two away. And I think one of the biggest follies that we've had is to beat up on unions the way we have. They fight for their people, and that's largely important. Now, are there some unions that have gone too far? Yeah, I would point to some of the things AFSCME has done and SEIU has done that are a little too egregious for what the people of the state of Illinois should expect for the sometimes product that's being put out there. And I'm not saying blanket statement that all of them are bad or not. No. There's just some efficiencies that we need to get put in place, and we find that those folks stand in the way. But Illinois has traditionally been a market leader because of our educated and skilled workforce, and a lot of that is due to the attention that we have in the union ranks. So I will tell you all day long that I accept union dollars because I support unions, and I think that's very important in the state of Illinois.
Can't we all get along? I know.
Yeah.
Look for the union label. I had to cut this one out because I'm going through the paper and I see this. Representative Keicher calls for decency, has his microphone cut. Just a little touch on that, because that's classic. Because, I was talking to Cohen Barnes before, there used to be a thing called the honeymoon period, right? Where a guy gets elected and even his adversaries and foes would work together for at least a couple of months. But that whole honeymoon period thing's kind of gone by the wayside.
It's gone by the wayside. But not really. It's a complicated answer to a very simple thing that happened. So traditionally, let me start here. For perspective, I am the Republican caucus chairman. What that means is I report to Leader McCombie, our leader, and when she has off-the-floor meetings that she wants to talk to everybody about, I help coordinate and run those meetings on her behalf. It also gives me special privileges with whoever's standing in the speaker's rostrum to conduct business on behalf of the caucus. And traditionally, they've been given people in that position a little bit of deference on some of the comments that they're making. And we just had one of our members on the other side of the aisle blast some national issue. And my biggest frustration this entire year, TD, has been that the representatives on the other side of the aisle are not addressing Illinois issues. All they're doing is throwing fits about what's happening in D.C. And when we look at the failures in Illinois right now, our unemployment rate at the end of the year was 4.9 versus the national average of 4.1. That underemployment represents 55,500 people who aren't working that should be, right? That's an underemployment number. How about we fix that problem? How about we get to the bottom of that instead of complaining about an issue in D.C.? So I gave a little bit of a response to that, and
Teddy Roosevelt has a quote. I actually have it on the wall. It says, "Do what you can where you're at with what you have."
amen.
And here these guys, they're talking about things that they can't change anyway, right? So
Can't
let's
touch it.
focus on what we can do, right?
Focus on home. And again, I point to those underserved that we're not currently serving. So when we're under a time crunch, it was a deadline week. Traditionally, you get 2 minutes to speak. They hadn't yet announced publicly that they were under the 2-minute timer. Usually, if you approach the 2-minute deadline, they say, please bring your comments to a close. And then you do, and you end your comments gracefully and cue off. Well, the person in the speaker's rostrum this time was the first time he was up there, and he just cut my mic off at 2 minutes without even telling us we were at a 2-minute timer.
We should point out you were able to go back. Right?
They gave me 1 minute additional to be able to address it. And I would be lying if I didn't say it felt good to be able to yell on the House floor finally, because we have decorum rules that says you can't do that. But that common decency and respect is still there with many of the relationships, but sometimes it floats to the top like it did in that case. And we just need process and protocols to be back towards focusing on making Illinois a better place for its citizens.
Well, I know I myself, whenever I hear the word bipartisan bill, it's so exciting to know that you guys can indeed work together on something.
Vast majority of things. Listen, we're in the super minority against the Democrat super majority. So there are 40 of our members. You need 60 votes to pass anything out of our chamber. So by definition, every single one of the bills that I've passed has been bipartisan. And so it prohibits us from doing anything that's too aggressive,
right,
Republican, or anything of that sort. I was really honored, if you remember the name Cal Skinner. He was a representative back in the 70s and 80s from McHenry County. He publishes a blog, and the McHenry County blog, and he has repeatedly put out there recognition that Jeff Keicher is the only representative that represents any part of McHenry County who has actually passed bills through the General Assembly. So that commonality, that working together on issues that are broadly important to the people of the state of Illinois, it happens day in and day out. To the level that it needs to, probably not, but it happens.
All right, we're talking with State Representative Jeff Keicher about various issues. Now, when my grandmother we went to Queen of All Saints School in Sauganash, and she belonged to the over 60 club. That's when we thought 60 was pretty old. But Grandma had a Buick LeSabre, a 444, and she'd back out of the driveway and she wouldn't look. And she'd be like, I'm coming with my big old Buick to get out of the driveway. And of course, she used to ride the brake too as well. But that's the plane was the car was so big you could land planes on the hood. But the point is, seniors, we get a bad rap with that. I just turned 65, and of course, people accuse us of leaving our left turn signal on the whole time. But talk about what you're proposing here is, well, first of all, tell us we're the only state in the country, right, that requires seniors to take a driver's test.
Correct. So longstanding rule, any senior at the time, it was actually 72 years and older, I believe, the original one. The Secretary of State has pushed that up to age 82 post-COVID. But any older person, when they have a birthday, every 2 years up to age 87, and every single year after age 87, must go to a DMV and must take a behind-the-wheel test. We don't even ask teenagers who've had 3 accidents to do that, right? We don't ask the guy who got busted going 35 miles an hour in a school zone, or 35 over in a school zone. We don't ask him to do that. Why, based on a birthday, do you need to have a test behind the wheel? And the feedback that we got, and we've got people that feel very much it should stay the way it is, but we are, like you said, the only state that does this. But the commonality that I got back was, well, my mom has this condition and she refused to give up her license, or my dad developed this. And so what the solution was supposed to be is repealing the idea that you had it based on a birthday. You had to do that based on a birthday. And instead, let's put in 4 criteria. If you've had a ticket or an accident, a physical or mental condition that would affect the safe operation of a motor vehicle.
Okay.
That's the population that should get the behind-the-wheel test, or at least go into a pool where they randomly get pulled to be able to take the behind-the-wheel test at any age. If we have a 35-year-old with multiple accidents, that's probably the person that we need to put in the exam chair instead of the old guy who's never had an accident driving around at 84.
Yeah, because
right?
I learned that the safest group, the elder group, is the safest group. They've had the fewest fatal crashes in any age group.
Yes.
So, I mean, they are careful drivers.
Yes, they absolutely are. And they don't go as many places, right? They go to the doctor, they go to the grocery store, the pharmacy. But here's the interesting thing about this. So last year, I introduced this. My peer Joyce Mason has been working with it for a number of years, and Senator Don DeWitt from St. Charles has been working on it in the Senate. And so I introduced this bill last year, House Bill 4431. TD, I had my phones lit up from people across the state. I've had friends from high school call me and say, hey, my dad wanted me to call you and tell you good job. So it's just a very important, popular issue that we need to get fixed. And so initially, Secretary of State Janulius had said, no, he's not willing to support this. And then he started getting some phone calls from these seniors and said, we're going to be neutral on it. We're not going to weigh in plus or not. We're going to be neutral. And then, you know what happens? They put a brick on it. So they put a brick on my bill, meaning my bill last year did not move. And they would not fess up or own up who put the brick on it. And lo and behold, this year in the new General Assembly, guess what happens? The Secretary of State comes out with his own version of the bill.
Is that right?
And he hands it off to a Democrat.
Wow.
Yep. So it was such a great idea that they wanted to take credit. And I share that just as not a glad handing, like make me better, but we have good bills. It's going to get passed. That's the important thing. But let's pass it for everybody's sake. It shouldn't matter who does it. Let's just get it done.
That's cool. I learned that inside terminology. Put a brick on it.
Put a brick on it.
During the Madigan trial, a lot of us learned a lot of this and how it gets introduced and what gets voted on and what doesn't get voted on.
This thing's golden.
It's golden, my friend. Now, the other thing, the Chaminade State Park, I know that's a huge issue, but
Yeah.
I wonder if you just give us an update. Where we stand with that right now? I was talking to people that they go to the restaurant out there and say, what's going to happen to them, if they want to get rid of the restaurant and the people that rent the boats out there. And what does that stand right now, Jim?
Yeah, so the bill passed out of the House. I'm not sure where it currently is in the Senate because we just finished our House deadline last Friday. So then all the bills that we pass in the House migrate over to the Senate, and then it's debated over there. So it still has to cross that hurdle. But the thing that I pointed to, and my floor comments, which are available online on my website or my official Facebook page, there is so much clouded information about how this happened and what happened 150 years ago that all I asked for was let's take a pause and have an official inquiry on what actually is going on. Because as I'm sure you've heard, there are plenty of folks down in Shabana who are scared of having their house taken.
Sure.
They're scared of losing rights into the park. The good folks that run and operate the campground and the restaurant down there, they're potentially losing their livelihood after investing a lot of money into making sure that's there. And what we've done now is we've created a sovereign nation where they can pretty much do things the way they want within DeKalb County. Should have been handled a little bit more judiciously, should have been handled with everybody around the table, making sure that we have an agreement. And my peers on the other side of the aisle decided that they wanted to do it, and they want to do it right now.
Yeah, I don't understand the rush. I think we and I talked often
Yeah.
about that. I don't know what the hurry is. Suddenly, after we've waited all this time, let's get it right, like you said.
There is no hurry, and they don't have any residents that are living there. They don't have any need to move it in. There is very aggressive stance that there will not be a casino located there. And some of the folks up in the Rockford area, the legislators representing the Rockford area, are very certain on that. They've made sure. Matter of fact, I believe Representative Dave Vella has passed a bill, or introduced a bill anyway, that prohibits a casino from being built at that site, which again, I think is very important. I think that's important.
But then would there be
if
no
it's
tax
going forward.
money then at all, Jeff?
It's a separate country. We wouldn't get tax money anyway.
Wouldn't get any.
Traditionally, in reservations in other states, there would be a one-to-one negotiation on police or fire help, and they would pay a flat rate or a
Right.
per service call rate for having that done, for having roads done. And so there would be literally an international, intergovernmental agreement about who's taking care of what. And we
Well,
didn't
in my
have the
background,
chance.
I watched Yellowstone. I watched a few episodes of Yellowstone,
Yeah.
so I know that's similar to what's going on there.
I've heard that's a good series.
Yeah.
Everybody keeps telling me I got to watch it. I like it. And so those details should have been worked out up front, and we didn't have a chance to do that. And it's no fault of Representative Brad Fritz, my peer who represents that part. He fought a tremendous battle. He got them on a technicality. He had held that up because of his skilled nature of looking into the details of what it was. Very proud of him about how he fought the battle, but the cards were just stacked against us.
Okay, we're talking to State Representative Jeff Keicher about various things. Now, the last issue is there are approximately 90 public schools in the state of Illinois with Native American mascots. Many of us know locally the Sandwich Indians, of course, the Morris Redskins as well. Now, I'm not certain what the actual legislation is here, but what does it really look like right now?
Anything that even approaches cultural appropriation in a sports title needs to be gotten rid of. Now, the funny thing is
Or they lose state funds, or how does that work?
this is the important part. There's no enforcement.
Okay.
There's no consequence. It just says you got to do it. And so the state has a way of doing that, right? And I think it is too bad. We've seen a couple of the places where that has been taken away, and I go back to Chief Linowick, right?
Right.
It was an
And then I thought they did
honored,
that exactly right.
sacred,
They talked to the Indians, they made sure they got everything right, the dances, everything was right down out of respect.
Yes, and it was that deep respect of what our roots are in this area, and to suggest that it was some sort of racist bias or we wanted to make it was honoring those that had come before us, and it's just too bad.
It really is.
Yeah,
So right now, but as you said, there's no enforcement per se then? It's just.
right. The comment that we were sharing on the floor is, if we think about Notre Dame, does that mean we're offending the drunk Irish people out there? Right? The Fighting Irish. I understand
That's a good
that
point. There you
the
go.
mascot came from pub fights
Yeah.
that the Irish would frequently find themselves in, you know?
I never thought about that.
Well, yeah, that's we could pick an offense from every angle on every mascot that's out there. The Spartans are from Sparta, Greece. Are we appropriating the warriors from thousands of years ago by calling them the Sycamore Spartans? And here, people look at this different ways, and I can appreciate that.
Sure.
I think it's an overreach.
I mean, in some way, yeah, it's a serious issue, but in some way, it's really not. It's
And we look at things like the history in Pekin, where they had a nasty name for their mascot, and that definitely it was the racial bias, and that was very apparent. But offense is something that you feel. It's not something that's intended, right? You feel offended by somebody regardless. And just because you feel that way doesn't mean everybody else should change the way they are. We're free Americans. There's a reason we all came to this country. It's so that we can do things our way.
when I first moved here about 25 years ago, one of the sports teams there, the E-Revs, and I'm like, the E-Revs, what is that all about? So I look at it, it has to do with red and black. The two colors are red and black, so they came up E-Revs. They're East red and black. But, I heard E-Revs. I'm like, what is that all about? And of course, the
Slippery slope.
You got the pretzels in Freeport. That was my favorite of all time. And I had a book.
Food discrimination, right?
There you go, food discrimination. And out in San Diego, there's San Diego banana slugs. I guess it's a tree that's indigenous to that area, so there's the San Diego banana slugs. And I thought we always end on a positive note. And first, my positive note is my gratitude to you for doing this, sir. So I thank you so much for finding time to do this. We're recording this in the bowels of the DeKalb Library, and so nice to know we have a situation like this where I can invite you in and have you at the library here.
And folks, what I've always appreciated about TD and the interviews that we've done, and I want to reiterate this, every interview we've done, none of the questions have been really shared beforehand. I had no prep. I
Where's the
walked
sport in
into
that?
this room without any idea of what we were going to be talking about today. And I think that's what people in Illinois deserve, right? I should be able to respond to you. And even if I respond with, I'm not sure, I don't know, that's okay. Because I should own the issue. I should own the votes that I've had. I think I've done that over time. And I think you doing this, I'm very excited about where this is going to go, because getting information to the people is one of the things that's lacking in our country right now, right? People don't know where to go for information. They don't know what to trust. And so hearing it firsthand from the people that are involved, it's critical. It's a critical service. So thank you for doing this.
Well, we appreciate that. Again, on a lighter note to end, and this is also affects, because I did want to ask you about the tariffs. This is from 1950. The Chronicle, of course, the midweek, they go back and look. For the past several days, activity has been recorded by the DeKalb Police Department. That's one for Chief Bird. The one I have for you is about the prices of eggs. There it is. Egg prices reserved to normal trend this year in Illinois. This is 1950, increased from February 15th to March 15th from the Agriculture Department. The department said prices usually drop 2% in this period, but they jumped 8% between those two dates. The department said Illinois farmers received 28.4 cents a dozen for eggs in March, which was nearly 10 cents lower than the 38 cents they were paid in April.
What year was that?
1950.
1950.
So
Okay.
nowadays everybody's obsessed with the price of eggs. So
And what everybody's leaving out is the bird flu. They slaughtered millions of chickens. I pushed back on my Republican peers who were saying that Biden had egg prices up too, right? it goes both ways. We have devastated the flock of laying hens, and we just don't have the capacity to produce at the level we once did. Folks, it has nothing to do with the economy whatsoever. It has to do with supply and demand. We just don't have the chickens to lay.
All right, very good. I'm glad you cleared it up for us there. And then, of course, I want to mention the fact that we're going to celebrate our 250 years in America. And it's funny, just in this interview, Jeff, 2 or 3 times you've alluded to America and what it all represents and all of us being, equal. And it's, it's still an experiment. 250 years ain't that long, but it's amazing what we've done.
Well, and I want to publicly give kudos and a shout out to Michelle Donahoe with the DeKalb County History Center. I had an opportunity about a year and a half ago to give an appointment to the state's level 250-year celebration planning, and I was able to get Michelle into that place. And so we have one of our very own local celebrities that's working intimately on a state and national level. She's had to go to a couple national events to plan what that 250-year anniversary celebration is going to look like. And with our struggles, we beat up on each other too much, and that's part of the American freedom and idea. We've lost the idea of forgiveness. We're recording this before Easter. I'm a Christian. I'm a ELCA Lutheran, and I feel very strongly that I'm forgiven for my sins because somebody sacrificed for me. And that grace, that ability to forgive somebody for infractions, I think is slowly going away. When at the same time, this is still the most amazing country in the world. We are doing things today that 50 years ago nobody could have dreamed we are possibly doing. And we fail to appreciate that because I think our riches are so beyond our ability to grasp. And we need to start doing better. And so frequently when I meet people, they'll ask how I'm doing, and I answer, I'm doing incredible. I really am.
I always truly believe that the majority of the American people will rule out. And so, we worry about oligarchy, we worry about one branch of the government getting stronger than the other. But we have these checks and balances, and you go back and read about our forefathers. Boy, when they put together this, how they really figured, Supreme Court going to keep an eye on the president keep an eye on the judicial branch, keep an eye on him. It's really great to see the checks and balances. I never worry when we worry about one branch getting too much power. Yeah. That's why we have the checks and balances, right?
Well, and we can even look at historical examples. When we look at Rome, right, the 1,000-year reign, which had to move from Rome because they were sacked over to Constantinople, and that ran 1,000 years, right? Mm-hmm. But guess what? It ended. That hubris, that confidence set in, the failures weren't addressed, but it was 1,000 years. So I figure we got another 750 to go before we really have problems.
All right. Well, beware of the eyes of March. Is that what I'm supposed to say?
Yes.
Like that.
Yes.
Jeff Keicher, the state representative from the 70th District. Jeff, thank you so much for your time and I hope you'll be a regular guest here on the show because we love to have you back.
Honor to do it. Yep.
Jeff Keicher has been our guest here on TD Ryan Unleashed podcast number 4.